those barriers, how they can change despite those barriers. It's not an easy process. What I used was a trans-theoretical model of health behavior change. How many of you are already familiar with this model? Yeah, a couple of you are. I found it to be very helpful, and particularly this one study I give you here is talking specifically on using this model to help us with weight loss, with a weight loss group. And it's been very helpful with weight loss group. So we have these stages that everybody's got to go through to make any change. I want to start working less and spending more time with my family. I have to go through these steps, and I might go through them very quickly, or it may take me years to go through them. First one is pre-contemplation. I don't think there's a problem, and even if there was, there's nothing I can do about it. This one always makes me think of Calvin and Hobbes. I didn't do it, besides no one saw me, right? So this one, they really are, this is not, a person is not ready to change at all. And so we're talking about what types of techniques we can use with this intervention we'll use with this person to help them move to the next stage. The next stage is contemplation. So, okay, I see there's a problem, but I really have no idea what to do. I really have tried everything. I feel like I've tried everything, and I don't know what to do. Preparation is, I know there's a problem. I know that there is a way that I can do something about this, but I've got to prepare. I've got to put my ducks in a row before I can get into really changing. And this is usually November 20th, I've introduced them to the diet, and they said, there's no way I'm doing this before Thanksgiving. Right? So I'm going to prepare for it and try it on January 2nd. So, but this is getting them closer to action when they actually change their behavior. Maintenance, they kept that change for 6 months at least. We've now got more of a solid lifestyle change at that point. So did you guys print out the readiness for change? This thing. So I just want to show you this. This is a thing I used in my group. So I can understand where they are, I need to figure out what stage they are in order to have the appropriate intervention. So this worksheet helped them figure out also where they were. And so when we look at that ruler, stage 0 through 3, that's pre-contemplation and contemplation. If we tell them to mark on this ruler, where do you feel like you are on readiness for change? And they're going to circle a number. And if they circle 2, they're in that pre-contemplation, contemplation area. If they circle somewhere between 4 and 7, they're in preparation. And if they're circling 8 and 10, they've changed. They started already. They're in action and moving toward maintenance. So then, once they choose where they mark somewhere on that ruler, then they're going to answer the questions based on where they were. And so if you'll see further below the ruler, it says, if your mark is on the left side of the line, 0 to 3, answer these questions. But if you are somewhere between 4 and 7, answer these questions. And one thing it's asking them is, if you chose the far left, if you chose 3, why didn't you choose 1? So this forces them to put down something positive, right? I'm not as bad as 1. I feel more ready than 1, and these are the reasons why. I don't want to say, well, why didn't you say 10? Doggone it, you should change, right? Because then they're going to say all the bad things of why they can't change. I want them to put down positives. So we're always asking them, why didn't you circle something further to the left? So that's one of the worksheets that we did in my class. But along with this, figuring out what stage they are, I also want to know, one, how important it is to change, and how capable they feel of changing. So they may feel that they're, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 10 for importance, but I'm a 1 for capable. So that tells me I need to direct my efforts, not to convincing them that it's important to change, but how to remove those barriers so that they feel that they're more able to change. These are all tools to help you in your initial assessment of how can I direct my efforts that's going to best help that person. So let's look at some techniques that we can use at each of those stages. So if you figure out they're in contemplation, or pre-contemplation, then we can use consciousness raising. That's making them aware of obesity can lead to stroke, heart attack, sleep apnea, all these various things. Environmental reevaluation. What is your impact on your family? Stuff like that. Dramatic relief, social liberation, feeling more powerful in themselves, self-reevaluation. Is this really where you want to be? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And where would you like to be in 10 years? In contemplation. In preparation, self-liberation, again, helping relationships. Who's going to support you in this change? Counter-conditioning, so trying to replace bad habits with good habits. That's the whole thing, again, about OTs. We're helping people form new habits, right? Action, again, there's some overlap between those stages. And figuring out maintenance, how are we going to prevent a relapse? What helps you continue on? This I all got from this website listed on there, prochange.com. Check that out for more details on what each of those techniques are. Again, it's all based on that trans-theoretical model of health behavior change. And helping your job in this model is to guide your person to the next stage. It's not to demand 100% adherence. So I told my people who did not use a ketogenic diet, you moved from pre-contemplation to preparation. Success. Later, you'll go into action. So that is when you're writing your goals for your patient. Your goal might be, that I want them to move to the next stage of change. Not that they are 100% with what I think is best for them, right? It takes us out of that police role and more of that guidance role. So let's look at my class, my Lifestyle Redesign Inspired group. This is my schedule. And you can see the first 7 groups were pretty much focused on the diet. And that was for 2 reasons. One is that dietary change, the research shows us that dietary change, diet is the most important thing in weight loss. If you have to exercise to maintain your weight, there's something wrong with what you're eating. We know there's plenty of people that because of other physical maladies, they can't exercise at all, but they're not obese. Okay? So diet is the most important thing. The other reason I spent so many sessions on this was because diet is the hardest thing to change. There is a saying that was attributed to Margaret Mead, but now it's in question whether or not she really said it, but she said that it is supposedly said that it is harder for a man to change his diet than his religion. Okay? So we spent a lot of time just on that. So we had the first session was just orientation and introduction to lifestyle change, and what was going to be expected of them and what they should expect of me in that group. And what I found was, first session, nobody knows each other, so they're not really talking very much. And so I had an hour and a half for the session, and finished everything I needed to do, and there was still like 20 minutes left. But then as we continued on, and they all got to know each other and really bonded with each other, an hour and a half was not enough. So you might want to think about that in your, when you're organizing your groups, that maybe an hour is okay for orientation, but after that, give more time. Then we talked about, session 2, I introduced the diet. And we went over the nuts and bolts of the diet. But now we need to talk about how are we going to change our habits, how are we going to remove our barriers, how are we going to, how is our diet going to affect our various maladies that we have. And so what I did in that lecture is that I had a person with Parkinson's, so I talked about that specifically, the diet and Parkinson's. And other people had high blood pressure, for instance. So you could tailor it to your group, whatever comorbidities they have, include that in your lecture on that one. And then we talked about what are strategies when you're eating out, when you're at a potluck, when you're at family gatherings, and you want to stick to the diet. So we talked about that, and then we implemented them. And the next session we met at a restaurant. And then we started talking about all other lifestyle change. So we went to physical activity and exercise, stress management, importance of sleep. All these things have an impact on our weight as well. Life balance and time management. And then our last one, wrap up a review, and we're planning for sustained change. How are you going to maintain this? How is this going to be a lifestyle change, not a temporary change? And that concluded the group. Let's look at a sample session. Were you guys able to print out that sample? So what I did with this is the 10 numbers on here. Those are each of the slides that I had for my didactic. And then I put in what I did for the various activities. So this was an hour-and-a-half session. And so first slide is up, and it's just, this is a lifestyle modification group for lymphedema and obesity. And we did our opening activity. And this activity I got from a friend of mine who's an elementary school teacher. And the participants loved it. They got to know each other really good through this. So 2 truths and 1 lie. So I love eating bacon, I juggle for a hobby, and I want to skydive when I'm 60. Which one's the lie? And so each person did something like that. They talked about, they did those 3 scenarios, and then people had to guess. And they love that activity. It's a great group cohesion activity. You really want them to get to know each other, because great if they get together outside of the group and support each other, nice. So we really want to encourage that. Then we talked about different challenges to changing your lifestyle, because this is what this group was about, barriers and coping strategies. So things that can make it harder to lose weight. And then methods to make yourself accountable. Talked about food and activity logs, different apps that they could use. And then I got some of these things straight from the USC program. And one of them was time deepening, slide 4. And that was doing 2 things together. You're pairing a new desired behavior with a cherished behavior. So I had them then go into small groups and brainstorm what 2 activities they could pair together. Going for a walk, but walking with a loved one and be able to spend time with a loved one. So you're pairing those 2 activities. And so they brainstormed on that and then shared it with the group. And healthy pleasures, I want them to think of other rewards besides food. So how are you going to reward yourself? You just lost 10 pounds. You've hit a milestone. What do you want to do to reward yourself? So thinking of those things to reward yourself that may not necessarily be food. And slide 6 was cleaning out your pantry. Again, we did a group activity. Listing things that are in my pantry. Should it stay or should it go? And I got some whole wheat pasta, stay or go. And so the group would decide if that is something that would be on the diet. I put some ideas that I got from authoritynutrition.com on slide 7. And best ways to boost your metabolism. He was talking about drink water. Sometimes you're not actually hungry, you're just thirsty. And if you drink some water, the hunger goes away, might help. Another thing he suggested was brush your teeth after you eat, because you don't want to get them dirty again right with eating some more, so sometimes they'll be less likely to go eat again. So just little hints like that. And slide 8, ways to get support for making change. So we discussed those. And then slide 9 was a self-reflection. What did you learn today? What stage of change are you at now? What progress did you make to your short and long-term goals? So we talked about what's your next goal going to be, and then I wanted them to work on their healthy pleasure worksheet for the next session. And then always my last slide would always be, this is what we're going to do next time. So that's kind of how I would lay out each session, gives you an idea. So now how are you going to develop your own program? So the first is, I got all this from Joy Dahl's book. In your reference list, program development and grant writing and occupational therapy, making the connection. And it's just a fantastic book for program development. I highly recommend it. So the first thing she says you need to do is do a needs assessment. So for me, my community in San Luis Obispo, we have the community health status report. And so I pulled that up, and they have a lot on obesity and a lot on childhood obesity. So it really gave the status of what's the percentage of people in our community that are obese, and definitely established a need. And then of course I did my own need in my own clinic. Definitely established a need just by what my figures were from that 6-month chart review. And then planning also, now we're going to be talking with our colleagues, with community leaders. We want to elicit support from the community and from other professionals, other medical professionals. How are we going to do the marketing? How are we going to recruit participants? So that's all part of that program planning. You need a mission statement. So I did right here what my mission statement is. The mission of the Spice, I call my program the Spice of Life. I want it to sound fun. The Spice of Life Lifestyle Modification Program is to promote and support health behavior change through education and empowerment using the latest research and evidence-based practice. And I was going to tell you something about that. Oh, I called it the Lifestyle Modification Group because lifestyle redesign is a copyrighted term. So, got to change that. You got to get permission of USC to use that, okay? Implementation. Now, where you can actually hold, if you're going to do groups, and my model combined group and individual sessions. We had 12 group sessions and opportunities for 6 individual sessions. Because you know there's stuff that your patient would like to discuss with you that maybe not to the whole group. And you need to do some individual work on their individual goals. And so they had 30 minutes of individual sessions 6 times, and then the 12 hour-and-a-half groups. And also we're going to talk here about reimbursement. There is a group OT code, 97150. It's about $15 for each person. So you can see how many people you need to have in your group to make this feasible for your facility. And then I would always bill as 97535 self-care training when I had the individual session. Of course, each person had to come to me individually for initial evaluation before even put in the group, right? That's kind of how I did that with the reimbursement. But this is a picture of our San Luis Obispo Public Library. They had a group meeting room that I used. And I liked it because, it had tables, it had close parking, and it had bathrooms. What's happening when our patients are really obese, they can't walk very far. So I did not want them to have to walk far. That exercise piece is going to come after they lose some weight, and sometimes only 20 or 30 pounds. And they're all of a sudden more mobile and they're going to exercise more. But when they're first coming, I didn't want them to be, prostrate on their first visit. And so I made sure we had close parking, bathrooms available, and I liked having the tables for a couple of reasons. One is when you are having a poor body image, it's kind of nice to have that barrier. You feel very exposed sitting in a circle. And so having that table was kind of a little bit, reduce the vulnerability. It also really helped for getting up and out of a chair. Okay? And then I'll show you the folding chairs right there. That's a Mighty Light. I don't know if I'm allowed to say brands, but these are folding bariatric chairs. They can hold up to 1,000 pounds. And so I was able to put 15 folding chairs in the back of my Prius to drive to the library for my groups. Have my flip chart, my LCD projector, and my 15 chairs. So, and if you're going to do this at a facility where you have maybe a group meeting room, it's very easy to store folding chairs versus our larger bariatric chairs that can take up a lot of space. This is not going to take up a lot of space in your facility to store those chairs. And they're only about $25 a chair. So,
do they come with arms or no?
then you can. These were cheaper and they did not have arms, and I was worried about the arms because they are narrow.
Yeah.
And then sitting in between the arms would have been a problem for some of my people. You can, I think you can get some wider ones with arms, so they can use that to push off instead of the table. Yeah. But I was really worried about the chairs that were provided at the library, your typical folding chairs, metal folding chairs. And now if someone's too heavy for it and they could get injured, they would become very embarrassed. I didn't want that to happen. I want to make sure they're going to be safe in the chairs. Also with program development is evaluation. And evaluation is ongoing the whole time, not just at the end. Be prepared for this before you even start your program. I had a form that I have them fill out, just as you guys are doing for each of your sessions. They filled out a form after each session. What did you think of today? How was the temperature? How was your parking today? Would you like the content? Was it all understandable? Did you wish that we had talked more? They gave their evaluation after each session. They also evaluated the entire program at the end. That was a longer evaluation. I gave it to them on the 11th session, and then the 12th session they turned it in, or if they still wanted more time after the 12th session. So they really gave me their input, because we know, even though we think we have a great program, we always want to make it better. And so your evaluation is going to be a very important part of the process. So how can we provide support for lifestyle change, especially after they finish the group? How are we going to help them continue the process? So one thing I always suggest is try to make change yourself first. Try something that you would like to change. I gave my example earlier. I want to spend less time at work and more time with my family, or whatever, and see how it is for you to make that change. Since for my group, I felt like the hardest part was going to be dietary change. I didn't find it difficult at all to change to a ketogenic diet, so I tried to make my own challenges. And sometimes lactose or cow dairy products, or people have a hard time with that, so I thought, okay, I'm going to cut out all cow dairy, and I love cheese. And so what was this going to be like for me to cut out something that I really love? Because I'm going to tell my patients to stop eating bread, and they love bread. So I wanted to go through that process, since I didn't go through it before. It was easy for me. And I would cheat once in a while, right? Just like our patients would. So you see how that is, going through those, that process. I think it's a good experience. So try going through change yourself. If you've never tried the ketogenic diet before, try it on yourself first. Although I will tell you that a therapist friend of mine, I gave her the 8-page handout. She wasn't doing the diet herself. She had an obese patient come in, and she said, I don't know anything about this diet, but here, you can try it if you want. And she just gave her the handout. The person did fantastic, just from the handout, right? But I do think that if you are already doing this way of eating yourself, it's easier for you to discuss it with your patient, help guide them through it. because you already know what it's kind of like to go through it. And then the other thing that we've done in my area is that we have a low-carb, high-fat dining out group. So once a month, we have people that are friends, family, past patients join us at a different restaurant each month. And we're there to support each other, figure out, okay, we're at the Olive Garden. What are we going to do? What are we going to eat here? Right? We problem solve through that. So it is also a way for that person that feels shaky in their change and they really need help. And so by checking in each month and getting that support, it helps them sustain the change. And then I do, with a couple of friends, I do a radio show on a community radio station. When they were first starting out, we walked in and said we wanted to do a show on nutrition. I said, okay. Didn't know what we were going to talk about, right? And so we have 30 minutes that we do talk about it. And it's a very local radio show, but you can get it live streaming online, so if you don't want to hear us. It's 3:30 on Saturdays, Pacific time. You just go to asterobayradio.com or .org. Yeah.
Can you get any old, is it like?
So, and I do have, yes. Thank you, Nina. A group of us did a nutrition conference a couple years ago. Eric Westman was one of our speakers. And for organize that conference, we did ccnutritionconference.com. And so we put recordings of past shows on that website. We're technically challenged, and so we're kind of behind in getting the shows on there. But you can get a few of the shows there, and then just tune in on Saturdays. And hopefully we'll get more shows uploaded. And then I have some resources for you. I have on here eatingacademy.com. That's Dr. Peter Attia. He's right here in San Diego. And what I like about his website, it's very science-based. And if you want to find out anything about cholesterol, which for some people with this way of eating, they're concerned about cholesterol, he has a very, very technical, I think it's a 10-part series on cholesterol. So you can really find out a lot by going to eatingacademy.com. And dietdoctor.com is Andreas Einfeld, a Swedish physician who has devoted himself completely just to helping people change to this way of eating. I send a lot of my patients to this site because he has a getting started for beginners part of it. So it's a nice place to go to get more information about how to get started on it and what foods to eat, what to avoid. He does have a paid part of the site. There's lots of stuff you can go to that do not involve buying a membership. So if you refer people to it, tell them they do not have to buy a membership. Go to the free part of the website. And then ketogenicdietresource.com, that's Ellen Davis. She's a nutritionist. I think she has a master's degree in clinical nutrition. And she's done heavy research in the ketogenic diet and has lots of stuff about even particular conditions. She talks about cancer and the ketogenic diet. She talks about cardiovascular disease and the ketogenic diet. So lots of information and recipes. So maybe your patient wants to know, how can I make low-carb waffles? Go to her site and you can get a recipe for that. Okay? Various books. I think Why We Get Fat is a really good one to recommend to our patients. It's really written in layperson terms. They can really understand that book. Whereas Good Calories, Bad Calories, also by Gary Tobbs, is, it's like 800 pages, but it's also kind of a higher level scientific text. So, but both excellent books. Wheat Belly, have you guys heard of that one? By William Davis. He is a preventive cardiologist, and he wrote a whole book on it's not a beer belly, it's a wheat belly, and if we give up the wheat, then we won't have cardiac disease. So, and then same thing, David Perlmutter, a neurologist, he said if we gave up the wheat, we would not have brain problems, neurological problems. And then Nita Teicholz wrote a book about pretty much the history of what's happened with dietary fat in our culture and how it's been vilified as the bad guy, and really wrongly, and she talks about how that happened. And to the point that we're really dietary fat phobic at this point. For a lot of my participants in my group, they were totally fine with cutting out the carbs, but terrified of eating fat, right? And I don't blame them, because their doctors would tell them, if you need to cut out the fat, you're going to die. So this is pretty scary. I think this is very enlightening, and what I tell the person that is afraid of eating dietary fat, we have all these lists of fats to eat. Pick out the ones you like. Maybe you like olive oil. Maybe you like avocado. Maybe you're okay with eggs. Don't eat the ones that you are afraid of, right? I'm just trying to spread the word, and I would like to assist you to making this change and to helping all of our patients.